G'day, Derbyites. It's Matt Noble here with Kevin Jacobsen, ready to break down the latest episode of Survivor and preview what's in store next for the castaways. Marcus, James Dixon sends his apologies. He's a bit under the weather this week. Kevin, what was the biggest thing that came out of this episode? For me, it was that we finally heard from Heather. Heather made a big move. Did it pay off for it?
I mean, probably not in the long run. I feel like, it didn't actually result in what I assumed she wanted to happen actually happening, which she seemed to be saying, should we switch the vote to Nasir? That didn't really take with the whole group. So now people are wondering, like, is Heather more of a threat than we thought she was? Like, she's erratic and sort of changing these plans at tribal council. So I am afraid that she may have painted a bit of a target on herself. Like, I know she was like the decoy target for a little bit here, but now I'm wondering, is she like actually going to become a target?
Yeah. Heather is in some ways like, with your allies, you want people who are reliable. And what she did at tribal council is an unreliable thing. I don't think I'd be too worried about her as a threat to win the game, but she could now be a threat to blow up my plan. That's if I was in an alliance with her. Yeah. So no, I think you're right, Kevin. I think it'll be interesting to see this bounces back on Heather. It was interesting. She threw out this last minute just a sort of attack on Nasir, this sort of just try to strike late, try to take Nasir out of the game. It then seems like then the sort of counter attack on her is waged, and it's sort of like, well, no, now we need to move the votes to Heather. We need to get Heather out now. And what resulted was a sort of 6-2 vote split between Tiffany and Xander, which at the beginning of the day was the original two that they were targeting anyway. Like, as soon as after the challenge, they're talking about splitting the vote between Xander and Tiffany and trying to get Xander players idol. And at the end of the day, that's what happened. Like, it almost seems like the Big Heather thing had no impact on what ended up happening with the votes.
Right. And that's the thing. I think this is something that will impact future votes. But in terms of this episode, like, it was all kind of just almost smoke and mirrors for what was ultimately kind of a predictable elimination at the end of the day, which is targeting the Yasa people. Evie is safe. She's immune. And Xander still has an idol. They're scared that something might happen. And if they put too many votes on him, something could happen where the Luvu people could go out. So obviously Tiffany goes. Like, there was no other option. So
yes, and I think talking about smoke and mirrors, there was talk about, like, Xander, Tiffany, and Abby sort of talking about how, well, look, the Yasa 3, we're at the bottom. We're sort of free agents now. We're not going to vote together or whatever. And there was a talk about whether, is that just another smoke and mirrors? Is that Xander with a fake idol in his hands again? And I do think they probably were all prepared to vote against each other if it meant they stayed in the game. But at the end of the day, Xander, Evie, and Tiffany were the only three not voting for Xander and Tiffany. They were the ones that attached themselves to the Nasir Heather plan. But interestingly enough, they didn't vote together. Xander voted for Nasir and Evie and Tiffany voted for Heather. So I don't know, and I guess with what Heather did, it didn't have an impact on who the main group, the group with power, were targeting, but it did have an impact on how Xander, Evie, and Tiffany voted, or at least how Evie and Tiffany voted. I doubt they went into tribal thinking they were voting for Heather. Maybe Xander thought Nasir was a target or something. I don't know. But are those three together still? Oh, well, two, Tiffany's out. Is Xander and Evie going to work together still, or are they free agents now? What do you think, Kevin?
I feel like they sort of just have to assimilate with some other members of the group. They can't be like, oh, this is still our side, come to our side of two people. Like, that's not really a compelling argument, I don't think. So yeah, I mean, I could still see them technically coming out on the same side at the end of the day, but probably not pitching it as like, hey, Heather, Nasir, Erica, come over to us. Like, you're on the bottom. Like, you need us, sort of thing. But I could see them definitely trying to weasel their way in to force kind of like a new dynamic of sides, because it's still like this big, what is it, like 8-person alliance at this point. Like, that's not sustainable. You have to be able to, you know, try to infiltrate that. So
yeah. The real ace in the hole that Xander has is if he's still got that immunity idol. I'm not sure, we're 100% sure whether Tiffany gave it back to him or not. I can't remember, but assuming he has that, we definitely didn't see Tiffany express that she was voted out with an idol in her pocket. So Xander in the game with an idol means that he can save himself another week. If him or Evie won immunity next week, perhaps then the idol, then they can't split the votes between those two. So that would be very interesting. You know, they could, if Xander wins immunity, they could put all the votes on Evie and just assume Xander will keep it for himself. But that's then they're taking that risk, which I think this season it seemed like they haven't wanted to take the risk. Like, they've gone with the split vote the last 2 weeks. They're not a fan. We saw even in moves that Shan made to avoid shot in the darks being playing in a previous try. It seems like they're very worried about that idol or that shot in the dark foiling their plans. So I think, you know, you got a good chance if one of them wins immunity next week, then it's really on between that majority, because they're going to need to decide who they split that vote with, and it'll have to be one of them.
Right. And I hope it's not just like an easy out, like, oh, we can't take out them, so let's just take out Heather. Like, that's kind of not very exciting at the end of the day.
And that's the real problem for Heather, is she really was sort of in the middle of things. She wasn't at the top of anything, but she didn't seem completely like on people's radar for who to take out. But now she will be the very easy split vote for the group. So I think
or Erica. I don't know if she's really improved her position at all after being like very much the target at the merge and then doing the whole flipping thing. I don't know if she made any inroads with people, but I personally was sort of hoping that she would maybe flip on her former Luvu people, but it still doesn't seem like that's happened. So
no, I think they're like, I'd like to say Erica, I think, has played a really good game post the hourglass break by sort of keeping her head a bit below water and by sort of like just going along with the group, not causing any waves, not trying to make any big moves. And like, I sort of think, like, I'm not sure how much that's helped her game, but I think she definitely hasn't heard it. And so then when someone like Heather comes along and does what she does, it's like, I think Erica's done a good job of sort of not being front and center in the game after making such a move that impacted a lot of people. So I think Erica's in a fairly good position now. Whether, you know, people like Deshaun and Danny are going to go into bat for her and sort of risk their game for her, I don't think so. I don't think she's built that tight bond yet, but I think she's not going to be on the top. And it did seem like there was a bit of momentum, I thought was a bit surprising, against trying to get Nasir out while he didn't have the idol. I thought Danny and Deshaun were almost using Nasir as a bit of an option that they would have to work with moving forward, maybe if they want to sort of cut Shan and Leanna loose. But it seemed like they were pretty keen to take that idol out.
Yeah, it seems like they do have a little bit of lingering tension from the pre-merge of feeling like, what do we do about Nasir? Like, literally, like, their first impression of him was the fact that he, you know, tattled on them looking for idols in the beginning. So I don't know if that's something that's sort of just like always in the back of their mind. Like, we can't really trust him. We'll keep him for as long as we can, but like, we want to make sure to nip it in the bud before he goes on some sort of a run. And I think Danny was saying something about how like he was afraid of being laughed at, essentially, of being like, Nasir's in the final 3, haha, look at me, like, should have taken me out earlier. So yeah, I still really like Nasir. I am rooting for him. I'm hoping that he can actually play a bit more of an active game, because again, he's another one who is sort of going along for the ride, which is fine. He still has an idol. He's still in a very good position, but it is sort of the thing where like there can't be like a final 8 in the end.
Yes.
You know, so I'm hoping for people like him and Erica to really cement their games now.
Yeah. I'll tell you, like, and just like going back to quickly, credit to Erica as someone who was seemed at the complete bottom 2 episodes ago, to have an episode where about half of the people still in the game's names were thrown out at various points. For hers not to be one of them, props to her. Like, really good job, Erica. Anyway, like, okay, big moment of the episode. Should Ricard have taken the papaya?
I am on Shan's side here, honestly. I think doing that right after you come back from a reward where your belly's full of grilled cheese. Meanwhile, this losing team, especially Shan, she hasn't eaten in God knows how long. Like, I get why she's a little like, you're taking what little scraps we have. So I definitely understand it. I don't know if I would have really made it so much of a thing that Shan ultimately did, but I was more on her side of that argument. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know what Ricard was doing there. I guess he wasn't thinking is what Ricard was doing there. And even his attitude afterwards of like being so defensive about it. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Like, I wasn't thinking. So like, you know, I think would have been a much better tone from him. I think in Survivor, like, you've got to be so careful when you win a reward, the sort of how you take that win. Like, and it's always so tricky. You got to seem like, on one level, like, you've got to not act too sort of like rub it in people's faces. And on the other hand, though, you don't want to play it down where people think you're not even grateful. They're like, oh, that person doesn't even care about the reward. Why are they taking it? They should give me the reward. Like, you know, like, because when you lose and when you're so hungry, like Shan and others were, you are so emotionally raw, and like little things will rub you the wrong way a lot more. If you're too happy for winning the reward, it'll annoy you. If you're not happy enough for winning the reward, that could annoy you. So like, I think it actually is one of the underreported things on Survivor, how bigger moment that is when you come back from a reward, your posturing and like how you respond to that. And I just think Ricard, like, just the way I'll try a bit of that, like, just was so tone deaf for the situation. And people, even though I think the game's moved a lot away from like, survival reward stuff. Survival stuff, I actually do think you have seen over the history, so people do get voted out for like decisions that are made surrounding reward challenges. Like, so whether they were really nice or really mean or really whatever, like, it does, I do think that is a interesting dynamic in the game. And I think Ricard played really poorly. I think also just perceptions reality on Survivor. If it annoyed Shan so much, he shouldn't have done it, because you don't want to do anything that's annoying people that much, unless it's your strategy to annoy people so much they take you to the end. But like, that's not what Ricard was doing.
The Philip Shepard strategy.
Yeah, the Philip Shepard strategy. Which I was fine with Philip Shepard, but he didn't articulate that strategy at the end.
I know.
Like, it was very bizarre. Like, so if I don't have that strategy, if you got that strategy, make sure you've got to make a very good case at the end as to how that was your strategy and why you should win over.
Right. You have to be like, I meant to do that. Like, you have to own it, basically.
Yeah. You've got to own it, and you got to really, and people will still probably be so annoyed that they don't vote for you, but that gives you a fighting chance. But that wasn't what Ricard was doing. He just wanted a bit of the papaya. He took it, and he'll have to bear the consequence of that. I thought it was also interesting, though, and I think the Shan-Ricard relationship is one of the most interesting in the series, because there's obviously some tension there and some annoyance there, again, with the papaya, but last week it was over the taking the vote and like sort of stuff like that. But Shan still referred to Ricard as her number one in the game this episode, which I thought was interesting, because we hadn't heard that since the new alliance of Liana, Shan, Deshawn, and Danny. And it was like, where does Ricard back? So it seems like Shan is still maybe Papaya Gate has changed everything. But before then, it did seem like Shan still had Ricard in her back pocket as an option, as maybe someone she wanted to go to the end with still.
Yeah, because we haven't really seen a lot of them like checking in with each other after the merge. So I was definitely also feeling like, are they even still really like a thing anymore? But yeah, she's referring to him as her number one, and Ricard is even saying like, I hope this doesn't affect my relationship with Shan too much. So like, there's still some desire from both of them to still work together. It's just, I do feel like, we're like one little microaggression away from them just totally being inseparable, or just totally being like, we can't stand each other. So
yeah, like I can see a world in this show where they are in either the final two or maybe the final four, and fire making sort of separates them from both making it to the end. But I can see them going sort of close to all the way together. Or I could see them going in all-out warfare against each other in a couple of weeks, and like just only one of them can stand. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I think that's the relationship to keep our eyes on the most moving forward.
Yeah.
Who else have we not talked about yet?
We could also just just mention, while we're talking about Shan, like the stuff that happened with Deshawn, which is
another interesting relationship.
Another tense relationship at this point, I guess, for Shan, where he's not really feeling heard by him, or he's whatever, what I'm trying to say, like he doesn't feel like acknowledged in his own opinions of what they should do, and she's sort of like bulldozing over what they should do. And
who do you think was right there, Kevin?
I think it's not super clear cut on like, I feel like they're both right and they're both wrong. They just are failing to really communicate with each other at the end of the day. Like they just, there's something about the two of them that doesn't exactly click. And I do think Deshawn should be giving Shan a little more respect in general, than to just always be so like having like almost like a tantrum every time she suggests a plan. Like it's a little bit immature in my opinion. But I also think Shan should definitely be more receptive to what he's saying and not always be the one who's dominating a conversation. So
I look, I don't think Deshawn necessarily responded as well as he could have in every situation, but I actually think like Shan, it seems like, really struggles when she can't get her way. Like she thinks she has the best like plan moving forward, and like if she listens, if she ticks the right boxes, if she does the pastoral things that she's really good at, it means people will come over to her way of thinking about things. And when they don't, she gets pushy. And I actually think this, to me, was probably the biggest red flag in Shan's game, is that she is very rigid in what she wants to happen, and she can get a bit. And actually, I was talking to one of my friends, Dave, who's a big Survivor fan, and he was saying he was getting a bit of Boston Rob vibes from Shan. This very sort of rigid, sort of like, people are coming with me. And I guess like, she's called herself the Mafia Pastor, and Boston Rob had a very Mafia style way of running his group. And as much of a legend of the game Boston Rob is, and he is definitely one of the sort of greatest Survivor players of all time, like he lost a final jury in All Stars, and the game he won, he was against a very two unlikable people. Like it would have been the biggest goats
in Survivor history.
Who's to say that he would have won that season? Because I think there was a lot of anger at him that season from people in the game too. Whether he would have won if even someone like an Ashley or an Andrea was sitting next to him at the end. Hard to know. He may have still won. I think the vote would have been closer. So it's not like Boston Rob necessarily had the best jury management. Now maybe Shan's got a bit of a softer edge to her than Boston Rob. Like maybe, you know, she hasn't, but just with that relationship with Deshawn, you see how it was really, he felt she was being controlling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not, I don't think it's a winning strategy 100% of the time, like other strategies could be. But I'm just wondering how far she can sort of take this before people start wondering, like, is she really just trying to control every single vote in every situation and every conversation? And I can definitely see, we saw like from the next time on that people are getting fed up. So I'm very concerned after a very great pre-merge for Shan, where we were all really singing her praises, that she might be in for kind of like a epic blindside, maybe sooner rather than later.
And I think Survivor's all about perception and having a good handle on how other people perceive you. And I think this showed that Shan was not on top of how Deshawn was perceiving her. Like, you know, and I think, like, you know, I still think Shan can win the season. I still think she's sort of like, but I'm probably more worried this week than I was last week after a few of her mistakes. Because I think, like, the sort of mistakes that I start to see coming through this episode are a bit more, ooh, this can affect jury management. This can affect just to not being able to catch a blind side coming her way, all these sorts of things. So, yeah.
I'm sort of wondering, like, because I'm someone who really probably reads too much into edits and like what's the story of the season and all that. I almost wonder at this point if this isn't like, this is the Shan show and this is why she wins, so much as this is how Shan loses the game in the end. Like if she gets all the way to the final three, does she even have the votes anymore to really make the case for herself? So
yeah. Or is she able to take along two goats like a Boston Rob and just win it? Look, she's still got great pastoral. Like, she has been able to connect and gain the trust of a lot of people in this game. And, you know, she hasn't burnt enough bridges yet where she's lost it. Like, I think you got Russell Hanson Heroes vs. Villains, where you could tell maybe about 2 weeks into the merge that he just didn't have the numbers left. You're like, he's just annoyed. Like, you could count more than half the jury that you just knew wouldn't be getting his votes at the end of the game. At this point, Shan is not in that spot yet. She is not, like, you know, maybe Deshawn she's burnt the bridge with. I don't think there's another juror that necessarily wouldn't vote for at the end if she got there. So she's not, you know, so I don't know, what's the code? What's the, you know, it's not code red for Shan yet. It's just, or code, you know, it's not, I don't know, what's that emergency system where the numbers are high or low or whatever?
Code black. I don't know.
Code black, whatever the thing is. She's not lost it yet. I think she's still one of the people who has a real shot of winning this game. But not code red. Maybe
we did get our one confessional from Heather this episode where she did mention a little bit of like not loving Shan either. I think that's what she said. I can't remember, but something along those lines.
Yeah. So I'm alert but not alarmed with Shan's situation in the game. Someone who I was just super impressed with, and they're sort of opposite Shan. They're not in a great spot, but I think they play this episode very well. Xander. Talk about Ricard really not having a good read on the reward situation. Xander opted out of the challenge. Let Erica have a shot at winning the reward, which is a very nice guy. And actually, in some ways, I go, oh no, they're going to vote him out because he's too nice now. But when he said why he did that, and he said he did that because he feels like people are in a very low, vulnerable state after losing a reward, and actually being with them at that time is a great way of forming bonds and connections. I think is really astute. I think it's really perceptive. And I think that's something that has been true on Survivor for a very long time, but I can't remember anyone who's articulated it or built that into their strategy. So I was really impressed with Xander with that move and that understanding. And it really shows he gets people. And like, it makes me think I think he's in a really bad spot. So I think he probably doesn't win the game. But like, you know, Xander, I think, you know, could win the game. I think, like, you know, with that kind of way of thinking about things. And then his other really impressive thing, I don't know if it's luck, I don't know if it's skill, who knows, but not playing the idol if he had it. Like, so he still has the idol in the game. He sort of, you know, Ricard's telling him to, you better play the idol tonight, which would be, to be honest, a real massive like red flag of
I think he's told him that multiple times. So it's like,
oh, Ricard really wants to play the idol. Why does he really want to play the idol? Right. But when you're in the situation, it's still a super tough call, right? Like,
it's true.
You know, like someone's telling you to play the idol. You obviously have some form of relationship with Ricard. You've had some conversation over the past 6 days. So maybe there's some bond there or something. Telling you need to play it. Like, if you don't play it and you get voted out, like, I told you, man, you're going, I'm going to be the idiot who on TV, everyone's telling me to play it. I didn't play it. Then I got voted out. Like, so it's easy for us to sit on our couches and say, oh yeah, you shouldn't play it. Ricard's being super obvious. But boy, when you're in that moment, that's still a gutsy call.
Yeah. When you're out there and you know that you're in the minority, like a 8-3 situation, and it's going to be one of you, probably you or Tiffany. Like, it is, you're right. It is in the moment stressful. I could see that. But I do think like Xander is someone who continues to be underestimated by so many of his fellow players. Like, I feel like Liana was also kind of feeling that way of like, I can't wait to get rid of this kind of like dumb surfer bro kind of guy, where I feel like he's sort of been typecast into that role that we normally see of like the Joe or the Ozzy or the just typical, you know, surfer bro, male energy, challenge beast kind of thing. But he's so much smarter. No disrespect to those other players, but like he has a real mind for the game. He really does. And if he makes it all the way to the end, that's a great story, first of all, because how did he manage to do that, considering? I'm kind of hoping that can happen. I'm rooting for him.
Now, also talking about stories and talking about Xander, I think something really, we saw the return. They've been using a lot of flashbacks this season, and often that's to reveal some dramatic twists, like Nasir finding an idol and things. But in this episode, we saw a flashback to the turtles. And the turtles that the Yasser tribe found when they were they were at a bit of a low at that point. They'd lost a couple of challenges in a row, and then they saw these turtles, and they're like, "Oh, look at these little turtles making it to the beach. You know, maybe that's going to be us. We're going to be the little guys who end up, you know, making it." And Evie brought that back after last week's chaotic tribal, and where they ended up on the bottom, and she was like, "What happened to these turtles? What happened to them?" Is that to you, Kevin, someone who loves the edit and loves the stories, is that to you sort of them starting to close out this Yasser narrative arc? Or is it the start of, like, you know, are we going to see one of those little turtles make it to the end and have a crack at winning it? Is that going to be, are we going to hear the turtles in a final jury speech?
If Evie is there, I could see Evie bringing that up for sure. But I don't know if it's a little bit of hope dictating on my part, but I do think there has been this ongoing narrative with them of being underdogs. Feels like even more so than the Yuwa tribe with Shannon Ricard, even though they had less numbers going in, you know. But they've perpetually just been the underdogs, these turtles. And I think one of them could make it. I don't think both of them will. So just depends on who it is. Seems like probably Evie is more likely between the two of them, because Xander, I think, is definitely considered this bigger threat in general. But
and technically, Liana is also one of the little turtles. She was also like
True.
She has jumped ship, but that could be this. She could definitely sort of say, like, we were little turtles, and then when the merge came, I was able to adapt. I was able to get in with the big, you know, like, so we have 3 little turtles. I really like they brought that back, and I'd love that to be a big story. So, like, I'm gonna be on turtle watch the rest of this season to see how those little turtles can do in Survivor, and if one of them can take it out. Yeah, I actually think them bringing that back is a good sign for maybe this being a story that the last one of them might have a bit of a run into this game and a shot at winning. At the prediction center, we have a change in who's in front. I'm looking at it now at the goal. You go goldderby.com. You can make your Survivor predictions for episode 9 right now. Or if you're watching this delayed, episode 10 or 11 or whatever episode they're up to now. But the front runner at the moment is Deshaun has jumped into the front runner position at 18 to 5 odds, with Shan, who has been leading for a couple of weeks now, dropping down to second at 39.10. So I guess the Gold Derby members actually think that exchange between Deshaun and Shan has improved Deshaun's standing and weakened Shan's in the game. So there you go. And we have Evie at third, and Xander in fourth, and Leanna in fifth. So the three Yasa people, if it can't be Shannon or Sean, people are backing those little turtles.
Oh, those turtles, yeah.
Yeah. Who are you picking? You and me have both been picking Shan for weeks now.
I know.
What do you think?
Oh God, I don't even know what is going to happen at this point. I think there's a lot of viable winners, which for me is a good season when it's not super obvious who's going to win. I would say Deshaun. I would agree with the front runner position for him right now. I think he is, again, to look at the story, is someone who's always sort of involved in the action, but not too out in front of things. And someone who can adapt, and someone who we see his perspective on a lot of things. So it makes sense as a satisfying winner by the end. Shan, I'm definitely rapidly decreasing my feeling on her being the winner. I mean, I could see it, but it would be a very complex story for her, because she's not always shown in like the best light in general. But yeah, I'm hoping one of those turtles can sort of get up into that position.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Evie's my favorite now. I just feel like I am wondering if this bigger group's going to implode at some point, and one of those little turtles can get through it. I know that's a bit wishful thinking on my part, even though I still love Shan. I'd be happy if Shan won the season still. It's not like I don't like her anymore, but I do wonder if hey, I don't know. I'm always very reluctant to switch my winner pick. I like to sort of stick on my winner pick and write it out till they get voted out. So I don't know what I'll actually do in the prediction center, but at the moment I'd put my money on Evie is the one. If, I like it. You know.
She had a great challenge performance both times, like dominated the reward challenge puzzle, obviously, like in 2 seconds, which was amazing. And then the immunity. So, I think
I wonder if she should have been a bit slower with that puzzle, like in terms of her threat level. Like, they just needed to beat the other team at it. So, she could have quickly just finished it off whenever she needed to. Maybe that's it's a bit of a reluctant. I think the good thing with winning the immunity challenge was it was like less than 5 minutes. So hopefully that doesn't, and 4 people sat out. So hopefully that doesn't make her seem like too much of a threat. Like, if I was Evie, I'd find it very easy to downplay that win. Would be going back, going, oh boy, so would never won if you guys sat out. Thanks for sitting out, guys. And boy, 5 minutes. I don't think I could have gone much longer than that. Like, lucky you guys dropped out in 4. I think I only probably had another 5 minutes in me. Like, right. So yeah, I think the good thing, it's good when you can win an immunity challenge, but it's because everyone else sat out or did really badly, because then you're not seen as a threat. The puzzle, I think people were very heavy. Look out for her.
Studied past puzzles.
Past puzzles.
I would be concerned.
But anyway, very good, very good. Any who thinks voted out next episode?
Hard to say. For some reason, I don't really think it's going to be one of the 2 Yasa people. I don't count Liana as a Yasa person anymore, so not including her. So
I think probably neither do Evie and Xander.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think I would be most worried about one of the bottom Luvu people in general. I could see something switching around where it's either Nasir, I think, is someone who they like. We might have seen like the seeds planted from this episode that Nasir might be a blind side waiting to happen, especially because he still has an idol. There's still 3 idols in the game. So, might want to neutralize that before things get too messy down the line.
Yeah.
I will tentatively say Nasir.
Well, that's a good pick. Like, voted out at the Gold Derby odds at the moment, Evie is the most likely to get voted out next. I guess that makes sense. She's in the bottom 2, and Xander has a hidden immunity idol. So, like, I think a lot of people are assuming he's safe. Second is Heather, and I might go Heather. I just think we saw, I think she's an easy vote out if they don't want to worry about vote splits and idols getting played and stuff like that. She's in second, most likely get voted out Gold Derby odds. And I definitely, if you think it's Nasir, that's great. He's coming in at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like about equal 6th or 7th to get voted out this episode. And so I'd pick him, Kevin, and put your super bet.
I'll take those odds.
Yeah, I'd take your Gold Derby for 2 of your Survivor predictions each week. You can make a super bet, which gives you more points if that one ends up being correct. So that's it. 37-1 odds is great for your super bet.
Yes, good.
Great return. So yeah, any last thoughts on the episode, Kevin?
Thought it was good. It was a good focus on relationships more so than advantages, which I always prefer. Like, look how much drama we got out of a papaya. So, like, I think that's proof that this cast is entertaining enough and they're thinking about the game very actively. So, really, really looking forward to seeing them start betraying each other.
Yeah. Was it also just like nice to see the sort of advantage focus on who's going to play an idol or not, rather than who's going to play a knowledge is power and shot in the dark and all that? Like, it was a bit more focused on our classic Survivor tribal drama of the idols and how they're impacting votes.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, guys. And you can go to goldderby.com to make your predictions.